The crying pierced through the airplane cabin like a siren, causing heads to turn and passengers to shift uncomfortably in their seats. Rachel Martinez clutched her 6-month-old daughter, Sophia, closer to her chest, whispering desperate apologies to anyone within earshot. The baby's wails seemed to echo louder in the confined space off economy section, and Rachel could feel the weight of judgmental stares pouring into her back. "Please, sweetheart, please," she whispered, bouncing Sophia gently, while tears of exhaustion threatened to spill from her own eyes. The young mother had been awake for nearly 36 hours straight, having worked a double shift at theater before catching this red-eye flight from Los Angeles to Chicago. The ticket had cost her every penny of her savings, but she had no choice. Her sister Carmen was getting married in 2 days, and despite their strained relationship, Rachel couldn't miss it. At 23, Rachel looked older than her years. Dark circles shadowed her brown eyes, and Heron's vibrant smile had been worn thin by months of struggling to make ends meet as a single mother. Her ex-boyfriend had disappeared the moment she told him about the pregnancy, leaving her to navigate parenthood alone in a studio apartment that barely qualified as livable. Every day was a battle between paying for diapers or groceries, between keeping the lights on or buying Sophia's formula. The flight attendant, a stern-looking woman in her 50s, approached with barely concealed irritation. "Mom, you need to keep your baby quiet. Other passengers are trying to rest." "I'm trying," Rachel whispered, her voice cracking. "She's usually such a good baby, but she hasn't slept properly in days." "The change in routine, the noise," she trailed off, knowing her explanation sounded like excuses. Sophia's cries intensified, and Rachel noticed several passengers pulling out their phones, likely to record her embarrassment. Her face burned with shame as she realized she was becoming any of those stories people would share online. The inconsiderate mother who ruined everyone's flight. "Maybe you should have thought about that before booking a flight," muttered an elderly man across the aisle, loud enough for her to hear. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. She had considered driving, but their old Honda had broken down 3 weeks ago, and she couldn't afford their repairs. This flight was her only option, booked with money she should have used for next month's rent. She was already dreading the conversation with her landlord when she returned. Just as was about to retreat to the airplane bathroom to try calming Sophia in private, a gentle voice spoke beside her. "Excuse me, would you mind if I tried something?" Rachel looked up to see a man in an expensive-looking navisuit, probably in his early 30s, with kind blue eyes and perfectly styled dark hair. Everything about him screamed wealth and success, from his Italian leather shoes to the platinum watch on his wrist. He was the type of man who belonged in first class, not squeezed into economy seating. "I what?" Rachel stammered, confused by his unexpected offer. "I have experience with babies," he said with a warm smile. "My sister has 3 kids, and I've learned a few tricks over the years. Sometimes a different voice or touch can help. Would you trust me to try?" Rachel hesitated. She had learned to be wary of strangers, especially men who showed sudden interest in her and Sophia. But something about his demeanor felt genuine, and she was desperate enough to try anything. "Okay," she whispered, carefully transferring Sophia into his arms. The moment the baby settled against his shoulder, something magical happened. Within seconds, Sophia's cries softened to quiet whimpers and then to complete silence. The man's large hand moved in gentle circles on her tiny back and hummed a soft melody that seemed to work like a lullaby. "How did you?" Rachel breathed, amazed by the sudden peace. "Like I said, lots of practice," he replied quietly, continuing his soothing motions. "Sometimes babies just need a change of scenery, or in this case, a change of arms." Around them, the cabin had settled into grateful quiet. Passengers who had been glaring momentspoor now watched with curiosity and approval. The flight attendant Evan smiled as she passed by, nodding appreciatively at the resolution. "What's her name?" the man asked, still holding Sophia with practiced ease. "Sophia," Rachel replied, studying his face. There was something familiar about him, though she couldn't place where she might have seen him before. "And I'm Rachel. I can't thank you enough for this. I was about to have a compliment. Nice to meet you both." "I'm James," he said, then added with a chuckle, "and don't mention it. We've all been there. Maybe not with a baby, but we've all had those moments where everything feels overwhelming." As Sophia drifted towards sleep against James' shoulder, Rachel found herself relaxing for the first time in days. She watched how naturally he held her daughter, how his expensive suit jacket was now wrinkled and slightly damp from baby drool. Yet, he didn't seem to care at all. "You're not sitting in economy, are you?" she asked, suddenly realizing he was far too well dressed for this section of the plane. James smiled mysteriously. "Let's just say you like to mix things up sometimes. First class can be predictable." There was some effing in his tone that made Rachel wonder if there was more to his story, but she was too grateful and exhausted to press further. The gentle hum of airplane engines, combined with the first peaceful moment she'd had in weeks, began to make her eyelids heavy. "I should take her back," she said half-heartedly. Though Sophia looked more comfortable than she had in days, she's fine here if you want to rest, James offered. "I don't mind holding her. You look like you could use some sleep." Rachel wanted to protest to maintain her independence and not accept help from a stranger, but her body was praying her. The combination of exhaustion, relief, and the first kindness she'd experienced in months was overwhelming her defenses. "Are you sure?" she asked, her voice already thick with impending sleep. "Absolutely. Rest. I've got her." Despite every instinct telling her to stay alert, Rachel felt her head growing heavy. The warmth radiating from James, the steady rhythm of his breathing, and Sophia's peaceful silence created a cocoon of safety she hadn't felt in months. Almost without realizing it, she found herself leaning against his shoulder, her consciousness fading as the airplane carried them through the night sky. What Rachel didn't know was that James had been watching her struggle for the past hour, his heart breaking at the sight of such a young mother trying so hard to manage alone. What she also didn't know was that James Whitmore wasn't just any passenger. He was the CEO of Whitmore Industries, one of the largest charitable foundations in the country. And this chance encounter was about to change both their lives in ways neither could imagine. Rachel stirred awake to the gentle announcement that they would be landing in Chicago in 30 minutes. For a moment, she was disoriented, wondering why she felt so warm and comfortable. Then the reality of her situation crashed back. She was still leaning against James's shoulder, and Sophia was sleeping peacefully in his arms, complete licking. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," she whispered urgently, sitting up quickly and immediately missing the warmth. "I can't believe I fell asleep." "On you. You must think I'm completely inappropriate." James smiled, seemingly unfazed by her embarrassment. "You were exhausted. Both of you needed the rest. Sophia only woke up once, and I managed to keep her calm." He carefully transferred the sleeping baby back to Rachel's arms. "She's an angel when she's peaceful like this." Rachel looked down at her daughter's serene face, marveling at how different Sophia looked when she wasn't crying from stress and overstimulation. "She really is. It's just been so hard lately. Everything feels like it's falling apart and I'm barely keeping my head above water." The words stumbled out before she could stop them, and Rachel immediately regretted the overshare. This stranger didn't need to hear about her problems, no matter how kind he had been. "Want to talk about it?" James asked gently, his blue eyes showing genuine concern. "Sometimes it helps to tell someone who's not involved in your situation." Rachel hesitated. She had learned to keep her struggles private, partly from pride and partly from the painful experience of people who offered help only to disappear when things got difficult. But something about James's demeanor made her feel safe. "I'm a single mom," she began quietly, glancing around to make sure their passengers weren't listening. "Sophia's father left when I told him I was pregnant. I work at a diner in LA pulling double shifts just to afford Ernie apartment. My car broke down. I'm behind on rent, and I used my last savings for this plane ticket because my sister is getting married." She paused, fighting back tears. "The worst part is, Carmen, and you haven't spoken in 2 years. We had a huge fight when I got pregnant because she thought I was throwing my life away. She only invited me because our mother guilt tripped her into it. I don't even know why I'm going except that she's the only family I have left since Mom died." James listened intently, never interrupting or offering empty platitudes. When she finished, he was skeet for a moment, processing her words. "That takes incredible courage," he said finally. "Raising a child alone, working multiple jobs, and still making the effort to repair a relationship with your sister. You're stronger. Then you realize," Rachel looked at him skeptically, "you don't know me. For all I know, I could have made terrible choices that led to this situation." "Maybe," James acknowledged. "But I've been watching you since we took off. The way you apologize to every passenger. How gently you handle Sophia, even when you're stressed. The fact that you're going to a wedding where you might not be welcome just because it's family. Those aren't the actions of someone who makes terrible choices. Those are the actions of someone who cares deeply about doing the right thing." His words hit Rachel harder than she expected. When was the last time someone had said something genuinely kind about her character? Her ex-boyfriend had constantly criticized her decisions. Herbis at the diner treated her like she was disposable, and even her own sister had made her feel like a failure. "What about you?" she asked, deflecting the attention away from herself. "You never told me what you do for work, and you still haven't explained why someone who can obviously afford first class is sitting back here in economy with the rest of us peasants." James's expression grew thoughtful, and Rachel sensed there was something he wasn't telling her. "I work in business," he said vaguely, "and sometimes I prefer economy because you meet more interesting people back here. First class can be full of people who've forgotten what real life looks like." "That's a very diplomatic non-answer," Rachel observed, studying his face. "Are you some kind of mystery man? Should I be worried that I fell asleep on a stranger's shoulder? Nothing dangerous, I promise," James laughed. But Rachel noticed he still hadn't given her a straight answer. "Let's just say I'm in a position where I try to help people when I can, and sometimes it's easier to do it without a lot often fair." Before Rachel could press further, the plane began its descent, and the captain's voice filled the cabin with landing instructions. The spell of their intimate conversation was Burkina's passengers around them began gathering their belongings and preparing for arrival. "This is probably where we say goodbye," Rachel said, feeling unexpectedly sad about parting ways with this kind stranger, who had shown her more compassion in a few hours than she had experienced in months. "I can't thank you enough for what you did. You saved me from complete humiliation, and you gave Sophia the best sleep she's had in weeks, actually," James said, reaching into his jacket pocket. "I was hoping I could give you something." He pulled out an elegant business card, cream-colored with simple black lettering. "If you ever need anything, and I mean anything, please don't hesitate to call this number." Rachel took the card and read it, her eyes widening in shock. The card was simple but expensive, with raised lettering that read James Whitmore, CEO Whitmore Industries. Below that was a phony number and an address in downtown Chicago. "You're James Whitmore," she whispered, staring at the card. Eventually, working in a small diner and struggling to make ends meet, had heard of Whitmore Industries. They were famous for their charitable work, appearing in news stories about education initiatives, housing programs for single mothers, and job training for people in difficult circumstances. Guilty as charged, James said with a sheepish smile. I was trying to avoid mentioning it because I wanted to have a normal conversation with someone who wasn't trying to ask me for money or impress me with their connections. Rachel's mind raced as pieces clicked into place. This explained his expensive clothes, his ease with helping people, and his mysterious comments about being in a position to help others. But it also made his kindness toward her even more significant. He could have stayed in first class, could have ignored her struggle, could have had the flight attendant deal with the crying baby situation. Instead, he had chosen to help. Why didn't you tell me? She skid, still processing the revelation. Because you needed help from James Thepperson, not James the CEO, he replied, and because I've learned that when people know who I am, they either want something from me or they become so intimidated they can't act natural anymore. I like talking to you as just me. The plane touched down with a gentle thud, and passengers immediately began standing and reaching for overhead comparts. Despite the flight attendant's request to remain seated, Rachel clutched the business card, unsure whether this revelation meant everything better or more complicated. The card isn't charity, James said as if reading her thoughts. It's an opportunity if you want it. As they taxied toward the gate, Rachel stared at the card in her hands, wondering if Fishin's encounter was about to change her life forever, or if she was about to wake up from an impossible dream. The Chicago airport buzzed with typical morning chaos as Rachel gathered her meager belongings from the overhead compartment. Her single duffel bag containing everything she owned for the weekend felt pathetically small compared to the sleek luggage other passengers wear. Retrieving. James waited patiently beside her holding Sophia while Rachel struggled with the bag's broken zipper. Let me help you with that, he offered, but Rachel shook her head firmly. I get it, she insisted, finally wrestling the bag free. The gesture was automatic. She had learned to be fiercely independent out of necessity. Accepting help meant owing people, and owing people meant disappointment when they inevitably let you down. As they walked through the jet bridge together, Rachel felt increasingly aware of the contrast between them. James moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to being important, while she clutched Sophia tightly, already dreading the upcoming confrontation with her sister Carmen. Where are you staying for thuding? James asked as they entered the terminal. A motel near the venue, Rachel replied, not mentioning that she had chosen the cheapest option she could find online with reviews that mentioned instant carpets and questionable lane. Kit's not fancy, but Sophia and I don't need much. James frowned slightly. Chicago can be unpredictable in October. Some of those budget places don't have proper heating. Have you considered I can't afford anything better? Rachel cut him off, her cheeks burning with embarrassment. Look, I appreciate everything you've done, but I don't need you to solve all my problems. I've been managing on my own just fine. The words came out harsher than she intended, born from years of struggling to maintain dignity while barely surviving. James raised his hands in a peaceful gesture, clearly recognizing he had overstepped. You're absolutely right. I'm sorry. I have a tendency to try to fix things, especially when I care about the outcome. They reached the baggage claim area, and James's phone began buzzing insistently. He glanced at it with obvious reluctance. I need to tackle these. He apologized. Work emergency that apparently can't wait. He answered with a crisp Whitmore here, and Rachel watched his entire demeanor shift into professional mode. While James handled his call, Rachel found herself studying him with new eyes. She had spent the flight talking to James, the kind stranger. But now she was seeing James, the CEO, The way he commanded attention, even while speaking quietly, how other business travelers in the terminal seemed to recognize him and whisper among themselves. I understand the timeline is critical, James was saying into his phone, but we cannot compromise on the vetting process for the housing program. These are single mothers we're talking about, not statistics on a spreadsheet. Rachel's breath caught. Housing program for single mothers. She strained to hear more of the conversation without appearing to eavesdrop. No, I want to personally review every application that gets rejected. James continued firmly. If someone is genuinely in need and we turn them away because of bureaucratic tape, then we're failing at our mission. A terrible realization began dawning on Rachel. This morning, she had shared her most intimate struggles with a stranger on a plane. Her financial troubles, her housing insecurity, her status as a single mother barely making ends meet. Now, she was learning that this same stranger ran programs specially designed to help people in her exact situation. When James finished his call, he turned back to her with an apologetic smile. But Rachel was studying his face with growing suspicion. That housing program you were just discussing, she said slowly. How long has Whitmore Industries been running it? About 3 years now, James replied, seemingly pleased by her interest. We've helped over 500 families transition into stable housing. It's one of our most successful initiatives. And the application process, Rachel pressed. How do people usually find out about it? Something in her tone must have alerted James that this wasn't casual curiosity. His expression grew cautious. We have outreach coordinator to identify families in need. Some of them are referred by social services, sometimes by community organizations. Why do you ask? Rachel felt a cold anger building in her chest. How convenient that you happen to be sitting in economy class, right next to a single mother who fits your program demographic perfectly. How convenient that you were so interested in hearing all about my financial struggles and housing problems. Rachel, what are you suggesting? James asked, but she could see the guilty knowledge in his eyes. I'm suggesting that this whole thing, your kindness, your help with Sophia, this entire conversation was some kind of setup. Were you already planning to for me a spot in your housing program? Is this how Whitmore Industries finds its success stories, by targeting? By lunch, the video of her kick had spread like wildfire, shared across every group chat in Westbridge. Hashtag shy girl snaps and hashtag KAY. Got kicked trended on social media. Lay expected suspension, maybe even expulsion. Principal Mrs. Hargrove called her into the office and closed the door. Where'd you learn that? She asked, her gray eye studying Leia over her glasses. Leia mumbled about Taekwondo, bracing for a lecture. Miss Sisharov leaned back in her chair, a faint smile tugging at her lips. You've got grit, kid, don't let them deem it. The video didn't just stay in Westbridge, it went viral, racking up thousands of views on platforms like TikTok and Instagram. Strangers across Ohio and beyond chimed in, some calling Leia a hero, others a troublemaker. Kale's parents stormed into the school demanding action, claiming their daughter was traumatized, but the full video posted by an anonymous student told a different story. Kale's deliberate shove, the ripped shirt, the crowd's cruel laughter. Social media erupted with girls who'd been bullied sharing their own story. Estigging Layla as an inspiration. Her phone buzzed nonstop, support from strangers, taunts from Kale's defenders, even a few death threats. Overwhelmed, Leia muted her notifications and retreated to her bedroom, where she pulled out her sketchbooks. She drew a warrior version of herself, standing tall in a Taekwondo uniform, kicking through a wall of flames. Asterisk. Then came the first twist. Ethan found her at the library after school. His usual swagger replaced by a nervous fidget. He stood by her table, rubbing the back of his neck. Leia, I'm sorry, he said, his voice low. I didn't know Kay would go that far. Leila's eyes narrowed, her pencil pausing over her sketch. You wrote the note? Ethan shifted, his gaze dropping to the floor. Yeah, but it wasn't my idea. Kay dared me to. She thought it'd be funny. The word shit like a punch, the note, the flutterophobe it had sparked was a prank, a cruel stunt to humiliate her. For Kale Samuelsen's spark flared into anger, but shedden kick this time. She closed her sketchbook, stood, and walked away. Her silence, louder than any words to school, didn't suspend her. Video evidence and witness statements confirmed Kale's provocation, and Leah received a warning instead. Kay, however, got a 3-day suspension for bullying, which only fueled her fury. Whispers followed. Illa in the halls, but no, they were different, less cruel, more a curious classroom. Who'd never spoken to her before, nodded in passing. A freshman girl slipped the note into her locker. You're a baddest, thank you. Leah tucked it into her sketchbook, her chest tight with something new. Pride asterisk. The second twist came a week later. Leah's old taekwondo coach, Mr. Han, saw the viral video and tracked her down through the school. It was older now, his hair grayer, but his voice still carried the Samaquiat authority. She remembered he ran a dojo in Columbus, an hour's drive away, and he wanted Leela to train again. A full scholarship. You've got a gift. Heddled her over the phone. Don't waste it. Leela hesitated. The gym incident had cracked her shell, but stepping back into the world felt like standing on a cliff's edge. She'd spent years hiding, building walls to keep herself safe. Could she really do this? Asterisk. Her prince saw the spark in her eyes and wouldn't let her say no. Her dad, a burly man with calloused hands, sat her down at the kitchen table. You're not that shy girl anymore, he said, his voice rough with emotion. You've got fire in you, Leah, always have. Her mom, exhausted from a double shift, squeezed her hand. Well, make it work. You deserve this. Leah nodded, her throat tight, and called Mr. Han back. She was in asterisk. Training gain was like waking up. The Columbus dojo was bigger than the old one, with polished wooden floors and mirrors lining the walls, pushing her through drills until her muscles screamed. She practiced her roundhouse kick, her form sharper with each session, her confidence growing. She wasn't just fighting for herself now, she was fighting for the girl she'd been, the one who hid in the shadows, too afraid to stand. Asterisk. At the dojo, Leela met Mia, a junior, with a quick laugh and a mean jab. Mia was everything Leah wasn't: bold, outspoken, with a knack for making friends. She saw Leela's quiet strength and latched on, dragging her into conversations and sparring matches. You're a beast, Grayson, Mia said after Leah landed a perfect kick during practice. Own it. For the first time, Leah had a friend, someone who saw her not as the shy girl, but as a fighter. Maya pushed her to compete, and by spring, Leah signed up for a regional taekwondo tournament in Dayton. The thought of competing terrified her, but it also thrilled her. She wasn't invisible anymore. Asterisk. Back at school, Kale Skleek kept their distance, but the tension lingered. Kale's suspension hadn't deepened her grudge, and she spread rumors. Layla was violent, unstable, a freak. Some believed her, but others didn't. The video had changed Leia's image. Students started approaching her, asking about taekwondo, complimenting her sketches when they caught glimpses in class. Even Ethan tried to talk to her again, cornering her in the hallway. I messed up. Okay, didn't mean for it to got this far. Leah looked at him, his perfect face no longer dazzling. You chose to play along, she said, her voice steady. Live with it. She walked away, leaving him staring after her. Asterisk. Prom. Camion went. Leah didn't attend, choosing instead to spend the night at the dojo sparring with Mia under Mr. Han's watchful eye. She heard later that Ethan and Kay broke up that night, his guilt over the prank driving a wedge between them. Kale's clique fractured, her influence waning as graduation loomed. Leah didn't care. She was focused on the tournament. Her sketchbooks now filled with drawings of herself in a taekwondo uniform, standing on a podium, a medal around her neck. The tournament was a blur of nerves and adrenaline. The Dayton Convention Center was packed, the air thick with the shouts of competitors and the cheers of the crowd. Leah's first match was against a girl from Cincinnati. Tall and fast, she was shaking as she stepped onto the mat, but Mr. Han's voice echoed in her head. Breath. Focus. Fight. Leah won. Herrenhaus kick landing clean, the crowd roaring. Kay was there in the stands, her face sour as Leah advanced. Leah didn't glance her way. She was fighting for herself now, not for revenge. Match after match, Leah pushed forward, her body Moving with a grace and power she had forgotten she had in the final round, she faced a black belt from a Taladoa girl with years more experience. The fight was brutal. Each point hard. Wanalea's legs burned her lungs but she didn't back down. With seconds left, she spun into a roundhouse kick, her foot connecting with her opponent's chest. Boozer sounded it. She'd won. The crowd erupted, Mia screaming. From the sideline, Esmerhan hugged her, his eyes shining. "That's my girl," he said. Lila stood on the podium, a gold medal heavy around her neck. She wasn't just that girl who kicked Kay in the gym. She was Lila Grayson, warrior artist survivor. Graduation came a week later, and Lila walked across the stage with honors. Her sketchbooks tucked under her arm, her future wide open. She'd applied to an art school in Columbus with a taekwondo shoulder to keep her training. Shy girl was gone, replaced by someone who knew her worth. K viewers, where are you watching this epic story from? Drop your city or state in the comments. Let's see how far Lila's kick has traveled across the USA.